Fibromyalgia is a condition that affects millions, but remains widely misunderstood, misdiagnosed, and often minimized by the very medical professionals patients turn to for help. Many people with fibromyalgia live with chronic pain, fatigue, and cognitive difficulties, yet find themselves dismissed or told it's all in your head. In today's conversation, I am thrilled to be joined by someone who's changing that narrative in a powerful way. Tami Stacklehouse is a true trailblazer in the world of fibromyalgia advocacy and support. She's an award-winning author, the founder of the International Fibromyalgia Coaching Institute, and the host of the Fibromyalgia Podcast. Tami joins me for a powerful conversation about her work with fibromyalgia, her healing from fibromyalgia herself, and it takes us through a journey of healing and empowerment. Whether you or someone you love has been diagnosed with fibromyalgia, or you simply want to understand this complex and often overlooked condition, this interview is one you won't want to miss. So let's dive in. Did you know that our struggle with weight doesn't start with the food on your plate or get fixed in the gym? 80% of our weight struggle is mental. That's right. The key to unlocking long-term weight release and management begins in your mind. Hi there, I'm Rita Black. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist, weight loss expert, best-selling author, and the creator of the Shift Weight Mastery process. And not only have I helped thousands of people over the past 20 years achieve long-term weight mastery, I am also a former weight struggler, carb addict, and binge eater. And after 2 decades of failed diets and fad weight loss programs, I lost 40 pounds with the help of hypnosis. Not only did I release all that weight, I have kept it off for 25 years. Enter the Thin Thinking Podcast, where you too will learn how to remove the mental roadblocks that keep you struggling. I'll give you the thin thinking tools, skills, and insights to help you develop the mindset you need, not only to achieve your ideal weight, but to stay there long term and live your best life. Sound good? Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and come on in. Have a seat. Get cozy. It's so nice to be here with you this week. I am very, very excited because I am sitting in my brand new office. I mean, it was my old office, but I moved out. I was in my daughter's room for over a month, and in this cramped little corner. But now I'm back in my old office that's all new again. And I swear to God, it's like my son came home and took a peek in here and he was like, oh my gosh, this is a completely different room. And it is. I've moved the desk to a different part. I've got a new view, and my view is of my clean walls. Don't you love that when, walls get painted and it's all clean? So I am just thrilled to be sitting here in this clean walled office, looking out my windows where I never had my chair turned to. So I had a view outside of my Italian cypress tree out in my front yard and a couple of palm trees down the street. It's awesome. So come on in and look at the palm trees and the Italian cypress tree with me. We are going to have an awesome interview today. And the only thing I'm going to say, I'm going to interview Tami. Now, before I dive into my conversation with Tami Stacklehouse about fibromyalgia, and I know you are going to love this conversation, I just wanted you to know that I have had many clients and students over the years who have suffered from this, and that's why I'm so excited to have Tami on. And maybe hopefully you don't have fibromyalgia, but I bet you might know someone who does. So my request to you today is to simply share the Thin Thinking Podcast with someone you love or someone you know who might be suffering from fibromyalgia, because I really think that they will get a lot out of this conversation, a lot of hope. So that would make, a huge difference to somebody's life, and it would mean the world to me. So now let me introduce Tammy. Tammy Stacklehouse is an award-winning author, founder of the International Fibromyalgia Coaching Institute, host of the Fibromyalgia Podcast, and executive producer of the feature documentary Invisible. Tammy teaches fibromyalgia patients how to take back control of their lives and health using her signature fibromyalgia wellness framework so that they can break free from the prison their bodies have become and begin living lives they love. Well, hello, Tammy, and welcome to the Thin Thinking Podcast. I'm really excited to have our conversation today.
Yes, me too. Thank you for having me.
Oh, well, no, it's my joy. I hear a lot about fibromyalgia from many people, but I don't know. I'm looking forward to learning more about it from you. How did what started your journey with fibromyalgia?
Oh, goodness. Like most of us, it started, because it was something I was running into, right? My own challenges. I was one of those kids who always had something going on health wise and was always searching for, what's wrong with me, really. And it wasn't until I was 35 that I finally had the right doctor who could give me a diagnosis. And I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. That was back in 2007. And the first couple of years, really, it was like I was treading water. Nothing really got better, but nothing really got worse. I was on a bunch of different medications.
Ask you in regards to that, because 2007, when did it become a word and a diagnosis? Yeah.
Good question. Good question. So we can actually go back in medical literature for 200 years and see descriptions of what is now called fibromyalgia. It wasn't called that back then. In fact, at the beginning, it was sort of seen as a hysterical woman's disease, that it was a psychological illness.
Of course, as most things are seen as a hysterical woman's disease.
Right, exactly. But then in 1990 was when the name changed before then, but 1990 was when we really had published diagnostic criteria. And, our first medications came out early 2000s. So even though it's been around that long, it's still kind of new in the medical world.
Yes, no, that makes complete sense, because I remember, I think, seeing clients in the early 2000s and they were just like, well, I've got this thing. It's like it wasn't really given a name until recently, and it's fibromyalgia, and they mentioned the hysterical woman's thing, and so but so you were given some medications, but they did have medications at the time, but the medications that well.
Right. I was diagnosed right after the first fibro medication came out, which was Lyrica. And I remember when Savella and Cymbalta both were released as the new thing for fibromyalgia, and I was still fairly newly diagnosed. So fortunately, I was diagnosed after there was at least something. But a lot of people, like you said, if you were diagnosed before then, and if you think about like the age of your doctor, right? 1990, and medications only coming out in the early 2000s. A lot of your doctors probably never even really heard about this or trained on this. Even our newer doctors aren't really this isn't something that's really taught in depth in medical school. So a lot of doctors don't know what to do with us. But yes, I fortunately came in right after some of those things were released, and they did help some. And I think that those medications were important for my recovery because it helped manage the pain and some of those symptoms to a point where I could then start working on other things, right? They were definitely not the long-term fix. They play a role, But when you are in a place where you can barely get out of bed, right? When you are, I mean, there were many years where cereal was my main meal because I didn't have the energy to shop. I didn't have the energy to then put things away when I got home, and I sure didn't have energy to cook anything after that or clean up after it, right? So it just becomes this spiral of not being able to function and not being well. And something has to turn that spiral around, right? And I think sometimes medication can be the thing that can start us going in the upward direction.
What are the major, for somebody who doesn't know anything about fibromyalgia, what would you say the major symptoms are, and, how did they present to you? So I'm hearing exhaustion.
Yes, yeah. So there's really four main symptoms. There's a whole lot of symptoms, but the four main ones are widespread body pain. So with fibromyalgia, our pain really is all over and it moves around. So you might hurt in one place one day and somewhere else the next day, which is part of what makes it hard to diagnose, part of that hysterical woman's disease thing, right? Because it's moving around and there's nothing wrong on like x-rays, MRIs, things like that, right? So widespread body pain, fatigue, absolutely. And it's not just like, I didn't get enough sleep and I'm tired. Like this is the kind of exhaustion where, like if you've ever had the flu and you are totally wiped out for the day, just going from your bed to the couch, that's the kind of fatigue, right? Or even if you feel great, going from feeling great to empty is quick. Right. So if you remember back in the day, those old cell phone batteries we used to have that would last like 5 minutes when they were supposed to be full, right? That's what our bodies are like. So fatigue. We also have unrefreshing sleep. So there are a lot of sleep issues that come with fibromyalgia, specific to fibromyalgia, but basically it equates to waking up and feeling like you never slept. And then brain fog or cognitive dysfunction. A lot of people get really scared of that one because it can feel like dementia or Alzheimer's or something like that. Fortunately, it's not degenerative. You can absolutely get your brain back, but it can feel like that when you're going through it. So those are really the four main ones: widespread body pain, fatigue, unrefreshing sleep, and the brain fog or cognitive dysfunction.
Is there an age that this usually comes on, or it can come on at any age?
It really can come on at any age. It is more common. It's actually the number one cause of musculoskeletal pain for women in midlife. So that's kind of where it kicks in. But kids can have fibromyalgia, like men, women, like it doesn't really discriminate. But the way I look at it is like there's definitely something in our genetics, right? You're 8 times more likely to have fibromyalgia if a first degree relative does. So we know there's a genetic component, but then something will happen in your life that sort of flips that switch to turn it on. And the older you get, the more opportunities there are for those switches to be flipped, right? So we are going to see it more common the older you are, but it can still happen at any age.
Okay. That all makes sense to me now. All right. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that explanation.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really a challenging thing to deal with because we have so many ups and downs. You can have a good day and then you can have a bad day. And it's really like until you get to the point where you understand your illness, your body, you know how to manage things, it can feel like you're a victim to your own body in a way, right? You can't make plans. Somebody says, hey, you want to go out for coffee next week? I have no idea.
It sounds, I have a dear friend who has long COVID. It sounds somewhat, and I don't know if those have been linked at all or.
Yes.
They have.
Yes. So right at the beginning of COVID, when people We didn't really even have a term for it. We didn't know anything about long COVID. We just knew that there were some people that would get COVID and not get better. I had several people that I talked to who said their doctor diagnosed them with fibromyalgia because it was the closest thing. They have found that about 30% of people with long COVID will also be diagnosed with fibromyalgia. So I do think we're going to see our numbers grow because of that, because COVID's not going away.
And is it seen as an autoimmune disorder or no?
That is a really, really good question. So for the most recent history, it's not been seen as autoimmune. Prior to that, it was. So there's kind of this back and forth. One of the problems is we don't really truly know what causes fibromyalgia. So it's like we're seeing the leaves on the tree, but we haven't found the root yet. And so one of the things that I think can be really helpful with all of this is to understand that this is leaves on the tree, right? Like you might hear this piece, that piece, this is the answer, that's the answer. And it's like, yes, for that part of the problem, but we have to put it all together.
Right. So you were helped with medication somewhat, and this
Yep.
gave you some relief so that you could have the bandwidth to kind of pursue things and find deeper healing for yourself. Is that correct?
That is exactly right. Yep.
So what happened after, as you were deeper healing? Like, take us further on your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, that the first couple of years, I really felt like I was sort of treading water, and that wasn't where I wanted to end. Right. So I went back to my doctor and I was like, okay, what else can we do? And she actually had a health coach working in her office. So she connected me with her. And, this was way back in 2009. This was not like it is today, where things are even more common. But that really was the major turning point for me, because all of the things that my doctor had been telling me to do, changing my diet, learning pacing, some of the mindset shifts, going to bed on time, like all of those habits and things that we do, all that lifestyle stuff is really, really hard to do on your own for most of us, right? So having that coach to help me troubleshoot, hold me accountable, all of that, strategize with her, all of those things, really, that's where things really started to shift for me. But on a very a practical level, the things that I changed, I did go gluten-free for a while. For me, that was really important at the beginning. I am not gluten-free now, just to be super clear. But it was important at the beginning to give my body that space, like one less thing to struggle with, right? I discovered that I had autoimmune thyroid, so I have Hashimoto's. I discovered that I have something called upper airway resistance syndrome, which is very similar to sleep apnea. So I got that treated. I was anemic. I had adrenal issues. It was just sort of checking each thing, sort of ticking the box, working on the next thing. And I remember having this thought, this attitude back then of, my body is made up of a bunch of parts, right? And if all the parts work better, my body as a whole is going to work better. So I kind of just, ticked off each thing.
And were they all interrelated, or were they separate from the fibromyalgia?
So the answer is both yes and no. So there are absolutely things that connect, right? So the symptoms of hypothyroidism are very similar to fibromyalgia. It's muscle pain, joint pain, brain fog, poor sleep, fatigue. Those are all the things that I talked about, right? So while it isn't a piece of fibromyalgia, like directly connected, it is adding to the amount of pain I feel, the fatigue I feel. I describe fibromyalgia as an amplifier. So whatever you're experiencing, it just cranks up the volume. You stub your toe, it cranks that up, right? So if you're experiencing pain because of low thyroid, it turns that up too, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So you worked with your health coach, you turned down, you started ticking all the boxes. And did you get to a point then where you felt good, normal?
Yes. It was only about 6 months working with my coach that I felt significantly better. I won't say like not cured, not remission in that point or anything like that. Like I've definitely still had fibro symptoms, but significantly better. So to give you an idea, my husband and I had been talking about going on this trip during the summer. I started working with my coach in January. And so in the summer, we were going to go on this trip. And we talked about whether or not we should rent a wheelchair for me, just so I wasn't spending all my energy going from thing to thing instead of being able to actually enjoy the thing. Right.
Right.
And by the time we got to the trip, I didn't need that. So,
That's awesome.
yes, so it was a significant difference. And that's when I decided I wanted to kind of pay that forward and become a coach. So that was, summer of 2009. And I will tell you, today I am absolutely in remission. The last time I experienced any fibro pain was New Year's Eve 2018.
Wow.
So yeah, it's been a minute. And so that's one of the things I want to make sure that people know hearing this is that is possible. That is not something that we're being told very often. But
That
it
it
is
could go
possible.
into remission.
Absolutely be in remission.
How many years was that after? So there was that 6 month timeline where you worked with the coach, you felt significantly better, then you started training as a coach, and how long did it take for you to kind of what you would say enter into remission from the time you started really working on yourself?
Yeah. So, I mean, it took some years. It wasn't, we're not counting this in weeks or months. We're counting it in years. But in the grand scheme of things, really also not all that long. So I was diagnosed in 2007, started working with my coach in 2009. I became a coach that summer. And looking back, when I wrote my first book, I wrote that in 2015, and I was definitely not in remission, but most of the time, the majority of the time, I didn't have symptoms. It would just be flare-ups here and there, maybe a couple of flare-ups a year, those kinds of things. So it was absolutely a progression there. But I would say, from 2009 to 2015 is really, 2014, 2015. So about 5 years, I would say I was maybe 90% there. And then just a few additional things, that I worked on with my doctor between that time got me to the point where I was really in remission. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how, like, what, given that, then, like, and the journeys you've been on with other people, would you say the same? Like, what is the most interesting or surprising thing you've learned, like, not from your own journey, but from like coaching others and taking other people through it?
Yes, great question. So, one of the things that I started doing, I wish I had done this since day one, but I didn't. We learn as we grow, right? But I started tracking my client results using something called the Fibromyalgia Impact Questionnaire. And this is what they use in the studies. If you read studies on fibromyalgia, they'll talk about the FIQR. So I started using that to measure my own client results. And pretty consistently, we can bring your symptoms to about half of what they are in about 3 months, which is, it's
Life changing.
impressive and absolutely life changing. Yes.
Is this with or without medication? I'm just curious, like if they were using Cymbalta or Lyrica.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of hard to, like, I give you that statistic because that really is what I see with my clients.
Yes.
But it's not it's not that double blind clinical study where like nothing changes except the coaching, because the job of a certified fibromyalgia coach is to get you to the right doctors, to get you on the right medications, to get you to the treatments that are going to work best for you. So yes, for some people that meant adding medications, changing doses. Sometimes that meant new therapies, like maybe now they're going to myofascial release or acupuncture, whatever it might be. But a lot of it is us managing ourselves, right? Things like diet, like I said, going to bed on time. That's the thing I'm going to deal with the rest of my life. But pacing, our mindset, how hard we push ourselves, how we talk to ourselves, like all of those things are part of the equation. And so, yeah, the cutting symptoms in half means a lot of things. And it's a little bit different depending on the person, what they need.
Okay. Very, very cool. And so 3 months, and then and that is where they're just like feeling much, much better. And then is there another like stat of like after 3 months, or does it really vary from person?
It kind of varies from person to person. The reason I use the 3 month statistic is that's kind of where we start everybody. So everybody has done at 3 months. Not everybody has gone beyond 3 months, right? So that's a little bit different statistic. But I can tell you that our graduates who have graduated as certified coaches, when they graduate, from the point they start to the point where they fully graduate as a coach, that's, year and a half, 2 years, depending on how quickly they move through that, they're usually about 75% better.
Oh, wow.
And I just did a graduation a couple days ago, and the gals that graduated there, like, essentially were symptom free.
Very cool.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is.
So now when you work with people, I think you mentioned you have a framework, how you work through things with people. Do you mind sharing some of that with us?
Yes, absolutely. The thing with fibromyalgia is that it is very individual, right? Both our experiences of it, but also, all the other things that go along with it, right? Like I mentioned, I had to get my sleep disorder, my thyroid issues, I had to get those managed in order to have my fibromyalgia in remission. So everybody's a little bit different. So we start with assessment. We start with that fibromyalgia impact questionnaire. We start with my fibromyalgia wellness style quiz that connects your personality with how you experience your fibromyalgia. We talk about what you've tried, what worked, what didn't work, all of those kinds of things. So that's really step one, is that assessment. Step two then is creating the plan where you and your coach are going to figure out, okay, I need to get a sleep study done. I need to have my thyroid tested. Like, here are the things that we're going to work on, kind of creating that plan. The third step, of course, is implementing that plan. Now, some people can do that on their own. Most of us, I think, need someone to help guide us and need that outside accountability. So that is the next part. And then I think the most important part for me is the fourth part, which is where we take that and we pay it forward. Our fibromyalgia community just does not have enough hope. And so I feel like those of us who have experienced that, who have gotten our lives back, I think we need to carry that forward, whether that means being a coach, or it's just as simple as when you run across somebody with fibromyalgia, you share that hope with them, right? You don't have to start a whole new business or anything like that. But I do think we have a responsibility to pay that forward.
How many people do you think are out there undiagnosed? Like how is it still going on where people are not being diagnosed?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a hard number to know concretely, right? Because we're talking about the people who aren't diagnosed. But just to give you some statistics, the number of people who are diagnosed is about 6.4% of the population. It's a little higher than women than in men. So it works out to about 1 in 13 women and about 1 in 20 men. So that's what we know.
Wow, that's a very high percentage.
That is a very high percentage. It's a lot more than most people think. Now, here's the part that makes it a little scary. One of our fibro researchers, Dr. Claw, he has said that he believes that 3 out of 4 fibromyalgia patients are undiagnosed. So take that number and multiply it by 4. That is how many people we really could be dealing with. That's like a whole quarter of the population. I don't know if I believe it's quite that high because that's a lot, but I do believe that it is higher than that 6.4% for sure.
Wow, that's
especially in the days post-COVID, right?
Yeah. So you've written a couple of books. Tell us about the books.
Yeah, absolutely. So 2015, I wrote my first book. It's called Take Back Your Life. And it was really written because I had gotten to the point in my business as a coach that I knew I couldn't help everybody, right? There were way more people out there than little old me could do on my own. So I wanted to write that book to be able to help people that I wouldn't be able to coach directly. So that was the original book. It was also written to be the curriculum for my training program to train other people to be coaches, right? To figure out how to duplicate myself. So that was the first book. The second book I wrote was called The Fibromyalgia Coach. And it was really inspired by one of my clients, actually. She had gotten to a point where she had gotten quite a bit better, but she kind of plateaued. She kind of got stuck. And the more we talked about it, the more it seemed like it was her job and the demands of her job that were sort of holding her back. So this book, I give 8 key questions to ask to sort of evaluate, what does success mean to you? How social do you want your job to be? How physical do you want your job to be? To just sort of think through all of the things that go into us having a career and help you sort of figure out what is going to be the best fit for you. I mean, obviously for me, it's being a coach. That isn't going to be the answer for everybody. But when you have fibromyalgia, there are some things that just aren't the right fit, right? Being a UPS delivery driver, right? Running around carrying those boxes, like that is probably not the most fibro-friendly job. So how do we then evaluate and figure out what that is? So that was the second book. And then I did a second edition of my first book because in 10 years, a lot of things have changed. So I did an update of Take Back Your Life. And I actually have both of those available. If your listeners are interested in grabbing a copy, both of those are available on my website that you can download for free.
Yeah. So you will give us a link to your website or a link to the books on your website?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. The best way to find them is just fibromyalgiapodcast.com. If you're listening to this, you're a podcast person. So just go to my podcast. You'll find all the deals.
Cool. How about your wellness styles quiz? You have some other, like, I know you have another free, like a quiz that some people can take that they might find interesting.
Yes. I personally think this is the most fun. It's my favorite. But the Fibromyalgia Wellness Style Quiz, I started thinking about my clients and how their personalities and just how they approached life actually affected their fibromyalgia symptoms and created its own unique challenges, but also their own unique strengths for how to manage their illness. So the Fibromyalgia Wellness Style Quiz is actually based off of the 5-factor model of personality, using 2 of the 5 factors. And it's the 2 that are most associated with health outcomes. If you're curious, it happens to be conscientiousness and neuroticism, which I wish they would call that something different because nobody wants to be told they're neurotic, even if it's just 2%. but we kind of, correlated those and created the perfectionist, the ponderer, the playmaker, and the prevailer. And the perfectionist is pretty much what you think it should be. And somebody who's a perfectionist usually has no problem doing exactly what the doctor tells them to do, right? That's like their superpower. But the challenge for them is they want to do everything 110%. And at some point, you have to make some choices with fibromyalgia. You can't do it all. And so sometimes they push harder than they need to. So that's just like one example. But you can go out and you can take that quiz, figure out what your fibromyalgia wellness style is. And if you sign up for the advanced profile, I'll actually send you a series of emails that tell you what your strengths are, what your challenges are, what's probably causing your flares, how to avoid them, some of those kinds of fun things, specifically for your wellness style.
Very cool. Do you have a story, like a transformational story, like with working with someone that you want to share to leave our listeners with? And then I'll ask you one last question, Tammy.
Absolutely. I would love to. So I'll actually share two, if that's okay.
Yeah.
I think, people are different in how they go through things. So the first person was someone who took my certified fibromyalgia advisor class, which is a 9-week class. I teach you everything I can about fibromyalgia in 9 weeks. And she came into this as a patient, really struggling. And when she finished the class, she had only improved by 3%. She would joke about, ruining my average. But not everything can be measured in terms of pain and fatigue and brain fog. The transformation that I saw in her over those 3 months, just in how she interacted with people, how she thought about herself, about her body, like there was so much that changed that kind of made the way then for all those other things to start happening, right? Sometimes we have to get out of our own way before we can start to see some changes. So if she hears this, she'll know who she is, and that's a big transformation that's not measurable that I'm very proud of. And then another client that I'll just mention really quick. I love her story. She has a very, very active family. She's got kids that are professional athletes, like just a very, very active family. And with her fibromyalgia and some autoimmune conditions and other things, she ended up being relegated to be the person that held the coats. And so that for her just sort of became this symbol. I don't want to be the person holding the coats, right?
Yeah.
And, it's taken her some years of getting different things diagnosed and treated and finding the right therapies and finding the right exercise to help her build up her own physical strength. But my favorite thing is when I see her posts and she's out there doing the things with everybody, right? When they do the turkey trot and she does the walk, not the run, the walk, but like that's what it's all about, right? It's not really about reducing our pain or our fatigue. It's about letting us be able to go out and live the lives we want to live. And so every time I see somebody doing that, getting to go live their lives, not be the one stuck holding the coats, that's what it's all about for me.
That's so cool. It must be very gratifying to help people in that way, because it sounds like such a tough disease to endure. Go ahead.
Oh, I just absolutely agreeing. And I was just thinking about one of my graduates a couple of days ago who said that when she was first diagnosed with fibromyalgia, she was not thinking about how she was going to be able to live with it because she wasn't going to. And, take how you will, but to be able to now be the mom she wants to be, do her work the way she wants to do it, be able to go live her life. Like it is literally the difference between life and death for some people. which is a big responsibility, but also a huge joy, right?
Yeah, that's so powerful. Well, I have one last question for you, Tammy, and then I'll have you repeat your books and how people can get in touch with you. What would be like if somebody was struggling, their first step? What would you say?
So I think the first step, whether you're diagnosed or not, because sometimes getting that diagnosis is a challenge, right? We just talked about that. I think the first thing is to educate yourself as a patient, because if you aren't educated, then you don't even know if this is a treatment you want to try, if you're even seeing the right doctor, if this is the right diagnosis. So the first thing that people really should do is educate themselves. And obviously, I've got a lot of really great resources. The Fibromyalgia Podcast is one, my books, all of those things. But there are a lot of other good sources of information as well. And a lot of them you'll find as guests on my podcast. So that would be the first thing, is to educate yourself. And if you feel like that is overwhelming, I would highly recommend working with a coach. It wasn't until I hired my coach that I finally started to make progress, because it was so overwhelming. I needed another person's brain to help me figure some stuff out and really figure out what was going to work for me, what was going to move the needle and make a difference. And so don't be afraid to get that help if you need it, whether that's a certified fibromyalgia coach or whoever it might be for you. Sometimes we need that outside person to come alongside us and help us see the things that we can't see. So those are really the two things I would say. Educate yourself as much as you can and get help if you need it.
Do some doctors not see it or like give pushback with the idea of fibromyalgia?
Absolutely. And, sometimes it's directly related to how old they are, which makes sense considering, when the timeline of everything, right? But sometimes I'll see it even in younger doctors. There will be pushback of, this isn't a real diagnosis. It's just a diagnosis people give you when they don't know what's wrong with you. That is not true. Sometimes there is still the people who think it is a psychological condition, not a real physical one. So that can be a challenge. I do think it is important to track down other things that might be going wrong. Like I said, thyroid is an example. The symptoms are very similar. You don't want to call it fibromyalgia if really you just need to get your thyroid treated. But we definitely need to have doctors who are tracking that down, not just being dismissive.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, this has been wonderful. And just please, one more time, I will be putting all these links in the show notes, but they can also find you at Fibromyalgia Podcast. You go ahead.
Yep. Yeah, fibromyalgiapodcast.com. That's the website for the podcast. Of course, you'll find me. You just search for Fibromyalgia Podcast in your favorite app. You'll find the podcast there. There's lots and lots of episodes you can listen to out there. The quiz you can find at fibroquiz.com. It's also linked on the podcast website, but that's where you can find that. If you go to the podcast website, if you go to fibromyalgiapodcast.com, look in the main menu, you'll see resources listed there. And that's where you'll be able to grab the free books and other goodies that are out there.
Awesome. That's amazing. Well, thank you, Tammy. This has been really illuminating and helpful, and it was a joy to meet you.
Yes, you too. Thank you again.
Well, thank you so much, Tammy. It was great. And wow, I learned so much from speaking with you. And remember, there's in the show notes are the links to both the quiz that Tammy mentioned and her website, where you can go and pick up or download her books for free. So please, and do that for someone you love if you know that they have fibromyalgia. All right. So have an amazing week. And remember that the key and the only key probably the only key to unlocking the door of the weight struggle is inside you. So keep listening and find it. I will see you here, be with you here next week. Thanks for listening to the Thin Thinking Podcast. Did that episode go by way too fast for you? If so, and you want to dive deeper into the mindset of long-term weight release, head on over to www.shiftweightmastery.com. That's www.shiftweightmastery.com, where you'll find numerous tools and resources to help you unlock your mind for permanent weight release, tips, strategies, and more. And be sure to check the show notes